Do you find yourself swept away by the constant change and turmoil around you? Whether personal or professional, these challenges can keep us from living a life of peace and productivity. I'm Liz Hurl, a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist, and I want to show you data-driven strategies to help bring stability and peace to your life. Welcome to the Anchored in Chaos podcast. Hello, Dr. Caldwell.
Liz, how are you?
I'm great. Fantastic.
I'm good.
Fantastical.
That's great.
So I have been stewing around an idea for today's episode.
Go.
The expectations in education in today's society.
Oh,
It's kind of a mouthful.
yeah.
I was realize like blah, 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 blah.
Hot button.
Yep.
Hot
Lots
button
of
with
stuff.
me.
Lots of stuff.
We talk about this stuff all the time.
All the time. Your young men are grown, but they were obviously in the educational system. And I have a young man and a sophomore and a fourth grader. And so to talk public school. So that's kind of where I was going to go.
Yeah.
Revealing some areas of education, talking about our own education.
Right.
And that.
Right. You and I have some interesting parallels.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think
it
in today's society there is, and we've talked about we were just talking about this today. Individuals, we have letters behind the name, and that, I'm still just a regular person. Like I just have an area of education.
A girl standing in front of a boy.
Lord.
Shut up.
No, you shut up.
Anyway, I follow what you're saying. And
what I'm saying.
Continue with your thought. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks for the interruption.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's nice.
So
Thank you.
sorry. So
Continue.
sorry.
Thank you very much. Shut up. So what I was going to say is that I had a bit of an education upheaval growing up. I didn't get proper education.
Yeah.
I said that last time.
You're one of them there homeschool heathen.
I was only homeschooled because I wasn't a heathen.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, that's
another
fair
topic
enough.
for another time. We will talk about religion, but not.
Ooh.
I know. Another time.
Hey, Liz, how long do you want this podcast to last?
I am swinging for the fences. Hey, at this point in the game, I'm always rolling the dice every day.
Yeah.
But yes, I was in public school up until fourth grade, and I was raised within the Pentecostal faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very structured religion.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom didn't feel that we were getting the best education in public schools, and she didn't like some of the way I remember, I think I shared this, I was in an Alice in Wonderland play in like third grade, and I remember I was one of the queen cards, and I got to wear lipstick, and in my upbringing, you did not wear any makeup. Yes, well, full on heathen today, but yes, I was able to wear lipstick, but my mom was very unhappy about that. And she felt like that was really going to kind of sway me into. And so I think within that and just some of the, sign the sheet if you want your child to go into human growth and development. And I was the only kid that sat out in the hall, like everybody's in there watching a video. And I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. But so from fourth grade on, I went into homeschool and she was my educator. And it was my brother and I, who was a year older than me. And it was a little bit of a hit and miss because, again, back in the late 80s, early 90s, homeschooling was not very popular.
Yeah.
And it was very, very expensive. We were very, very poor. So how that was going to wash.
People don't quite understand it. It's the beginning of homeschooling was really rocky. They just made people jump through the hoops. Because they were kind of formulating as they were making up the rules, right?
Absolutely.
They almost tortured people to make them get through.
Well, and just the credits that you would receive in public school, how do you ensure that that's being taught in homeschool? And none of that was created. The curriculum of homeschooling wasn't created.
Right.
It was just kind of a free for all. So I went into sometimes a variety of different Christian schools at times when they were available, but those were very, very costly. So those were very hit and miss as well. And so I never got a full-on public school experience. It's been really interesting watching all of my children go through it. My son, who's just about to be 19, and my daughter, who's just about to be 16.
Which, by the way, his was a horrible experience.
Yes. And
it ended his public school exposure, right?
He asked for early graduation because of the poor environment, which there was a mama bear in full form there. But
traumatic, truthfully.
No, it was very traumatic. And it's interesting seeing how the education system works, because I remember when I was 13, I went over to a friend's house and she wanted to show me her high school. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world because I had not been in high school. And we went over there and she showed me her locker and these halls. It was like all foreign to me. I was just like, this is really cool. But it was never what I have heard from my children. It seemed a little bit, I don't know, more organized or cleaner back then. And I'm trying to think, when was that?
1920s?
Easy there, Grandpa. No, it was the early 90s.
90s. Oh, the 90s.
And I had great hair.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it was very interesting and actually quite painful as a mother to watch my children have to suffer in different ways in the education system that they've had to endure. And I didn't have is this how it is? Like, I've asked my husband, like, is this how your experience was? He was like, absolutely not. I'm like, because I don't know. It's just terrible is really what it was. Yeah. There's been some good things, so I'm not trying to sound very daunting. But, and I said that before, so be aware, it's all good. I did finish my education. I didn't get it from
I see.
the education vending machine.
That's right. Yeah, you went on despite, right?
Oh, it was very challenging.
Statistically, these are the people, this is a girl that fell through the cracks. But you didn't.
Oh, no.
I mean, rose above all that.
It was just, I come with a fighter mentality. And so
right.
I am that person that says, you probably won't be able to do this. And I'm just like, oh, now you've done it.
Yeah, right.
Now you've done it. Now watch me do it. Yeah. So, and I just kept leveling up. And that's probably why I'm
the tragic thing about this story you're telling about the homeschooling one is not tragic. I know lots of people who...
Oh, sure. Absolutely not.
I went to college. I went to multiple colleges with people who were homeschooled to originally get there. Their education was far and above. I think everybody would claim, well, you don't have the social skills. You don't have the stuff. I don't think that's true.
Never impaired its better for that.
I know lots of goobers that are in public school. So I think the tragedy that people would see and identify before was, well, the social aspect, you're going to have people picking on each other and that's life. That's life. Now the new threat is, what are we getting from our teachers and administration, right? There's actually a threat from above too, not just below, from above. And what are these kids being taught in class, right? And your mom saw those things and she acted on it. And it takes a strong person to say, hey, look, I'm pulling you out of this. Now, differences aside, boys are different than girls, and
they are.
They are.
I'm sorry.
Well, are we getting into gender typing?
No, I'm just
Is that
saying,
what it is? Okay.
No.
Well, here we go.
Boys
are different than girls. I'm the last of 7. I'm the youngest. I was always small. I was
tiny, Tim.
Thank you, Liz. I only weighed maybe 105 pounds as a senior. I was tiny.
You were tiny too.
Well, the problem with that was when I was a freshman, sophomore, I got hazed a lot. And it was physical hazing.
Ugh.
Now, this is where people really get hurt. Well, that all changed. Kind of
That's kind of how it's
kind of a bad way. But that's kind of the story of the bully thing, right? You got to stand up to them. Well, I'm going to get past that story, and I'll just go on to the fact that I got all the way through school, and I couldn't read. Within weeks of me graduating, a counselor, Tom Huffman, pulled me and had some reading things done. I mean, you just realized, man, you can't read. And yet, from my junior and senior year, I got an associate's degree in building construction and in machining. So I'd go to college in the morning and I finished my school stuff in the afternoon at my high school. So it's not a case that I'm dumb. It's a case that I coped, right? And I thought the whole world was like that. But when it push comes to shove and they put a paper in front of you and you read it and you're like, it's not that I can't read words, but I have no retention. I have no idea I don't even know how to read. Nobody taught me that. Well, I thought the whole world was like that.
Sure, absolutely. And most people with those kind of educational errors have that same thought. Oh, everyone sees the world the way I see it.
Yeah.
So putting on glasses, we've talked about.
Putting on glasses. When the first time you get your first pair of glasses. So I've worn glasses my whole life. I keep them here. Mostly I don't wear them on camera because I'm afraid you can't see my eyes and all that stuff. So I just take them off. And I have handsome eyes anyway. But the idea behind that is when you get into the real world and you can't do these things, you got a problem. Well, now we're identified ADD, ADHD. We have kids taking a plethora of drugs, just a shopping cart full of drugs to do what? Stimulate, dope them up. I have no idea.
I have an idea.
It's horrible. It's horrible. Excuse me. But the idea behind that is I thought I had it bad. Nowadays, I think I think it's really bad.
Well, when I think I shared this story with you before, when my daughter who is a sophomore came home from 6th grade and told me that one of her peers in the class told her teacher to F off and got up and walked out of the classroom, I was just like appalled. Like, first off, it wasn't even, you would not have any teeth in your mouth if that was just,
when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and there was weight to, if this continues, I'm going to have to call your parent.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like, do I have to send even a note home? It's like, well, I'm going to shred that on the way home.
Oh yeah. I'm not going home. I'm not going home. Yeah.
But there's none of that. There's just, I believe, an intensive area of coddling and beyond, I don't even want to call it understanding. It's just coddling and accepting really inappropriate behavior out of, well, you're having a tough time. Well, newsflash, who isn't?
Yeah.
And no, I understand with children that is different. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely, but I also have the opportunity to work with a lot of educators, and the expectations that come down on them it's so unreasonable. They're very hopeless because it's like
teachers. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
It is appalling. There's like a no win. And then you have both sides of that coin, by the way.
We've had this discussion so many times, about education. The simple fact is, my whole life I believe that farmers and teachers are by far they're just unsung heroes, right?
Absolutely.
They give everything most teachers give everything they have. They spend their own money to provide materials and stuff like that for kids, especially the little guys. But they face now the criteria of these administrators that are on this social bandwagon that just cripple them, strip them of their actual ability to teach.
Absolutely.
And that's so disheartening. And then you have the other people who are so caught up into this bureaucratic process that it's now like a babysitting service, right? You drop your kid off. I just make sure he doesn't get hurt. I don't care how he talks to me. I don't care if he breaks. I don't care what he does. But at the end of the night, I punch out and go home. That's not teaching. And the tragic thing is that you can identify bad teachers now.
Absolutely. There's good and bad and everything.
Yeah. And you can't get them out of the system. Unions, which are rough, right? When I say rough, unions are a hard thing to break. And they had their place, but I have my own opinions of unions, and the teachers' unions are very powerful. And we see it's just this decline in education and a never-ending story of upheaval in schools. And it breaks your heart. And then we went through COVID, 2022, years 20 through 22. My heart goes out to those kids. They're like lost years in time. And now we have kids who can't cope. They really don't. It's not just the pressures of school. They can't cope with anything.
Well,
pressures.
Any type of negativity is a struggle. And, I was a parent that went through, my youngest was a first grader. And it was so I've shared that with you. It's so ridiculous. I felt incredibly bad for our teacher. She had all these little kids on Zoom and trying to go over a lesson plan. And I was of the benefit that I had managed my schedule, that myself or my husband would be able to sit next to her and try and keep her on task.
Yeah.
Because you know what we realized? That it's really, really hard for 6-year-olds to stay on task on a device.
Impossible.
And all the attention. And it was just mad show for 20 minutes of this lesson.
Yeah.
And I just felt like so terrible for her.
Yeah.
And understandably, there were children there that didn't have anyone guiding them back on task. And so there's a couple things going on there. And that is, I feel for it significantly for the children, for the teachers. I also, when you talk about coping, I also feel for the parents of, there was a financial hardship for many people during that time. Of like everyone's jobs that got shut down and just a real mental health impairment across, the nation when that happened.
The genius of shutting down the schools now meant that people can't go to work. Because I can't afford daycare. I have to work to make money to afford daycare.
Right. If my job was
if
still
my
allowing
son's
me.
home, I got to be home, right?
Yeah.
That was another travesty to all of society. It had the whole COVID thing was horrible, but that's another topic. The downfall to the educational process in the Zoom is, I'm a boomer.
Oh, I'm aware.
Whatever. And as a result, technology like that didn't exist when I was a kid. And the boomers, Gen X's, the Gen Xers are amazing because they came up with the advent of, they could do it all. But now we have people who
Is that when the round tire came out too?
Oh, yes. Yes, right around fire, around about the time of fire.
I was checking. I wasn't sure. Beating women over the head and dragging them.
We hit dinosaurs with our car all the time. But the problem with what was happening now was we have such a division in not only the coping abilities, but the willingness to do this, because I've made this claim in the past that we see now the fruits of the me generation, where my little darling can be anything. And then we became the helicopter parents, and then we became the participation trophies. And then now we're experimenting with our genders and our gender ideologies acceptance and
forced
acceptance. That's right. And now that hasn't crept into our education. It's almost started there.
Well, and I think that is, I was going to say, what is one of the questions I have here in my outline is, what is the state of our educational system? And who's running the show? Well, who's making all the moves? And that was something else, is in the time that I have had all of my children going through the educational system, the public educational system, which is now there is, by the way, small segue for a second, a massive shift in homeschooling and private schooling. It is like, I'm not sending my kids.
Charters, magnets, and homeschooling are off the charts.
Yeah. Understandably. And because of what is coming out and what is being educated to our children.
Yeah, what's being pushed in public schools is not going to be tolerated in these private high schools, private schools. Many or most are Christian-based. Not all, but they do have strong moral and ethical standards. Excuse me, kind of tickle. There is you're going to sign documentation. Now, your parents are going to have you go there, but you're going to sign documentation that clearly states that you're here of your own volition. You're paying to be here, and this is a contract. If you don't live up to it, you're gone. And they don't mess around.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, when you're in those schools, I know for a fact you get good education. It's structured. And do I think it's necessary to wear uniforms? No. But do I think it's beneficial in the social aspect of young people as they grow up to realize that you're really no more important than the guy next to you? Yes, because I'm a military guy. And uniformity is what teaches us that we're all the same. And that we can all rise. We're going to have weaknesses and strengths, and we can all rise or we can all fall. But we do this together. And I happen to ascribe to uniforms, but are they necessary? No, that's another discussion. But when kids can come to school in absolutely anything, I mean, I sat a school board for 7 years. I only left the school board after my last son graduated high school. And quite frankly, the message that was coming down from higher ups at the state level was not good. It's not productive. It's not beneficial to students at all. It all has to do with the business of education. The business of education.
Money.
Yeah. And what we have to do for our little darlings so that we can get every single dime we can from state and federal. And the message was no child will be left behind. Remember when George Bush was in office, there was no child left behind. Well, at this point, it's 0 children, right? The edict came down literally.
Completely doable.
Every child will be advanced. You just read 2 weeks ago that Oregon, Oregon. I think it's Oregon. No longer requires
you don't need it.
Reading, writing, or arithmetic to graduate. Now, wrap your head around that.
I can't.
For the history of public education or education for others, it's always been about reading, writing, and arithmetic. And yet those 3 are not even required to graduate, which quite simply means your kids are only going to be used as tax benefits to the state, right? Because you attend that school, and we don't care. It's not important how smart or dumb they are. We'll keep lowering that bar until it's buried in the ground, which they do.
Well, I know there is statistical data out there that they're literally trying to reduce intellect in individuals in making sound decisions, of being leaders. How do I say this? They are investing in the youth that they want to see become their leaders. And
you mean the Gretas? The Greta Thunbergs?
I'm not saying exactly how.
Well, here's something which I believe is factual evidence, is that you and I both know Jordan Peterson did a study on the history of education, and most of these models were all started in Prussian, in the areas of Prussia. The idea behind sending kids to go to school, and that they all sat in rows, and that they all wore the same clothes, and that they all ate meals when the bell rang, and that they all had to be at a special time in a special desk, and they're not building minds, they're building workers. Well, even that has gone out the window, because now you can be anything you want. You can show up when you want. You can cuss out the teacher and leave when you want. Now I'm not even exaggerating.
No, I wish you were.
You can literally cuss out your teacher and tell them I'm just too stressed. I'm at the school I was affiliated with. You could come in and report every class. You got a chance. Yeah, you had the opportunity to report what color you were.
What?
Green, yellow, or red. Green, orange, or red. Green is
like a mood.
Green is you're good to go.
Okay, it is a mood.
Orange is
like a mood.
Orange is I am on the cusp and I need a little time to simmer down, which you get separate of the class.
Okay.
15, whatever. Then you come back in. How are you? I guess I'm green. Then go. If not, you can decompress until you can go to class. Now, how many people do you think might take advantage of that?
Oh, well, children in their adolescent mind, I'm sure none of them would do that.
Yeah.
Because they're not looking at, getting all their wants and needs made. And the fact that they challenge the hierarchy of who's in charge, I'm going to consistently be the person in charge.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm going to completely conform and do all the things. Yeah. It's unrealistic and it's interesting. Like, who's coming up with these ideas?
Well,
are they saying psychologists? Are they saying clinicians? Are they saying that?
Well,
be honest.
That's the tragic thing, is that psychologists are running this ragtag circus on feelings for kids and affirming their gender and affirming all these decisions they are going to make that could alter their lives forever, right?
Absolutely.
Because we have to affirm, no, we don't. They're children. Now, we've had this discussion. When kids get out of 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade, stop.
Oh, yes.
Stop calling them kids.
Mm-hmm.
When they get into high school, They are young adults.
Young adults.
And they will be young adults or teenagers until they graduate from school.
Sure.
When they graduate from school, officially they're an adult in my. But every time I go to these board meetings or hear people speak about my kid this, my kid that, you know why your kid acts like a kid? Because that's all you call him as a kid.
Now, and I agree, and when I say I agree, I can understand where you're coming from there. Now, as a mother, don't me that way.
Go ahead.
Watch it. I'm a bit of a mama bear. I've told you that.
Sure.
And within that, I always say that they're my babies. I always have my babies. But I've really taken, as understanding of being that my baby boy is a young man and he's not a baby boy. And he would not like it if I ever called him.
Right.
But there is a nurturing aspect of when I think of my children. A mother thinks of, I look at all of my children, and to me, I can see them as infants. And then to see this young man that is in front of me, that is my son, that is, I'm always stunned a little bit, like how quickly that happened.
Sure.
And there's a transitional piece that I work with parents on when you transition from your child, from adolescence to young adult to an adult child. And that's sometimes really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have any, I would say, awareness around how impairing it would be to give them the idea that you're still making their decisions for them and you're going to support whatever decision that they're making. And that's another part of when I go back, I'm circling back to education. Well, now it's go ahead and call my mom. Go ahead and call my dad.
Oh.
Go and call him. And then the educator, the teacher, the whomever is the one that is in trouble for, well, what did you do? Or what did you say to them? Versus, oh my goodness, it's not just like Sunday church lesson like that pops in my mind. It was, growing up, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, thank you.
Sure.
Please, may I be excused from the table? Like all these mannerisms that are apparently not existent.
Yeah. Well, so you're saying there's an extension of that helicopter parent where they have my back no matter what, right?
Right.
Because I'm their little darling.
Mm-hmm.
But the premise I try to promote in that, but it's nothing more between the mother and the father, is the absence of the father. Mm. And we know through broken families that mothers raise babies into boys, but fathers raise boys into men. Mm-hmm. And in the absence of good men, you see the absence of good young men, right? I won't tell you the story of my young men because it's biased, but I will tell you of all of the people that my sons graduated with, they stuck out because they didn't have young men. They all came from broken families. They all came from single parents. They all came from,
which is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but you'd think that at least the message for manners, respect, would be continued at least in the school. My sons were not allowed. I hear all the time these young people calling their teachers by their first name. Mm-hmm. That would not fly. Mm-hmm. It is Mr. This. It is Mr. Mrs. That. Mm-hmm. I've had young men, young people who went to school with my sons come up and go, call me by my first name. And I go, you can call me Mr. Caldwell. You can call me Dr. Caldwell. You can call me Caldwell, but don't call me by my first name.
I feel so honored.
Well, my whole point is I was raised that.
Absolutely.
That's nothing more than respect. That's
right. It is. It is.
And in the military tradition, my father had taught me, if you were 1 minute older than me, you're going to earn my respect. If I don't know you, if I think you're 1 minute older than me, other than that, we're either equals or it's going to be Mr. Sorry. In light of knowing the truth, it'll always be Mr. anyway. My father to me is still Mr. Caldwell or Command Sergeant Major Caldwell, whatever I wanted to. It's just been ingrained in me, but we don't have that today. What we have now is status, right? Everybody needs to have some kind of status.
Yeah. The ever so being liked and all that, which is another, I don't want to rabbit hole down that, but I want to go to a question to you that I would like to discuss around your thoughts of Do you believe that educators have a responsibility in raising our children?
Yes.
You do?
I do. Well, I think anybody who's in the orbit of young people has a responsibility to be a contributor to that young person. That's how life should exist.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, there will be people who just claim, when my little darling is being a bit of a Dickens, that teacher's not going to tell me what to do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
My son or daughter is special. My son or daughter doesn't need this. My son or daughter, F you, whatever. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what the excuses would be. But yeah, almost I come from a generation where almost anybody who's older than you, who orbits in your world, has the ability to have some influence in that. And I have been popped in the back of the head by people I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey kid, knock it off. I mean, I'm acting up, or I'm being a fool. And my dad will look you straight in the eye and he goes, "You ever see that kid act up? You can smack him around." We don't come from we still come from loving parents.
Oh, absolutely.
This isn't from a world of, when we describe this to young people, it's like, oh, the people used to beat you. No, they
Actually
didn't.
not. I told you my story to that is that I always got intimidated by my mom's like, "Do you want me to, you need to go get a switch." And I'm like, "So I have to get the object that's going to switch."
Yeah.
And it was just so much of the idea.
The mental.
What destroyed me the most,
Yeah.
and I told you this, is that whenever she would have a conversation with me and she's like, "That really disappointed me that you would," I'm like, "Just get the switch." And because I'd rather have that because of the respect I had for her. I did not want that. And that's yet another thing that if a child that just segues into something else there when we talk about what educators up against. When a child doesn't respect their parents and is sitting in a parent-teacher conference, saying their mom's right there and they're like, "I don't even have to listen to this stupid bitch," and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so that's giving a teacher right there, well, if you don't even have...
That's mild.
I know. I was trying to be...
I know.
PG-13.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And that gives, well, what's my chance of getting this child motivated to be even
zero
structured or listening to any of the lesson plan when, and I feel because the teachers say, there's defeat in that parent's face. Like, I don't know what to do. But I think this, again, I don't want to get off track too much, but I think this has come from what is structured discipline and then what was physical and mental and emotional abuse. And those are two different things.
Yeah. No question. No. Yeah. The one thing about school is the structure of sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I see brilliance in kids all the time. For instance, I was not a good student. I was a D student. I never failed a test. But despite all of my shortcomings, I paid attention. I got failing. Now my dad didn't shrug his shoulders and go, "Well, he's just a dull pencil in my kit." He never did that.
That's nice.
My dad knew that I had other skills.
Right. Good.
And those are the things that they fostered. So that's the mechanical side. That's how it used to be. If you were 12 or 13, you'd work on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
You'd learn all these mechanical things.
Absolutely.
And you'd go to school if you could.
Mm-hmm.
At the age of 18, you're just timed out. Now we have kids who have no talent and no skills. Right? So what's lacking in that is their opportunity to play sports. And they may tie themselves to this balloon that thinks sports are going to carry me through the thing. That's where coaches, especially male coaches, have the opportunity to turn these young men around.
Mm-hmm.
And some do, some don't. If you think that everybody's going to be the star athlete, they're not. You need to tell them that.
Mm-hmm.
And losing is far more educational than winning.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you have people quit the team because we're a losing team, we don't want you. That should be the message. We don't want you. We want people who, I'm a part of something bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I want to segue into going into the military. All of my all my male members of my family have been military, or a long history of it. Nobody pushed for that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody said you would.
Right.
But
there's no requirement.
The interesting thing is that there's a patriotic side of that desire to go in the military, because I'm going to get a chance to protect something that's mine. I was born in this country, and I take stock in the fact that when I pledge allegiance, which people don't even know what that is anymore, or recite the Constitution, or anything that has a governmental, that stuff wasn't given to me. Somebody fought for that. And I get to do that too. And of the 1% of all the Americans that live, those people who join the military, they grow up. They get to see the world. They get to be a bigger part of something other than them, a team, a real team.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? You don't get to quit. They're going to keep you on there. They're going to teach you a job. You're going to grow up and become a man. I think that's a wonderful thing.
I'm sorry.
Opposite side of that is I don't care how smart you are. Not all kids need to go to college. They just don't.
Yeah. I'm not opposing that.
My dad would tell you, and this would be kind of harsh in today's day and age, but the world needs ditch diggers. And I'm telling you.
Why is that harsh? I think that is so, it's so unnecessary that be the feedback that the doctors, lawyers, higher level educated individuals, I should put it that way. The electricians, we need plumbers, we need, we need the construction work. I mean, that your importance is not, we've even said this about ourselves, like all the names are the letters behind your name.
Right.
That doesn't give me my value of who I am.
Right.
My actions, my character, my personality, the way I engage, the way I treat people, that is going to give you an indication of who I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that it's like, well, if I can, and this comes from some parents, well, if I can say my child's, that they're going to law school, which is great for individuals, we need lawyers, right?
Good for you.
But also, they're in a VOTech school doing electrician.
How to be a welder.
And there's same level of pride,
Well, my point to all of that is, to coin a very popular thing right now is this elitist view that what I do is better than you. I'm telling you, I know the strongest, smartest, most brilliant guys, people you want to, if hell ever came to earth, you'd want to have them by their sides. They wore coveralls. Mm-hmm. They could draw a picture in the dirt and build this amazingly accurate thing out of things that they make with their hands versus these guys who sit at computers and do CAD drawings and all that. But here's my question. What happens when the power goes out? And this is this thing where they look down on your trade versus this trade versus this trade. This whole status thing that they do. My sons were always taught, learn how to fix things. I don't care what it is. I don't care how you do it. But as long as they keep making things, and we forget how to fix things, and they become so complicated, you need to learn how to fix things. You will never be without work. You will never be in a position where somebody doesn't need you. People need
absolutely
air conditioning. They need everything. They need plumbing. Are those dirty jobs? You bet they are. And they pay great.
Well, was it that reel I sent you, that a gentleman in a drain sewer?
Yeah, covered in cockroaches.
Yeah.
Sucking out of sewage.
Yeah, I was like, oh, God.
Where are the women?
I'm not there.
Where are the women? Well, that's my point, right?
I will be the first to say that is exactly a man's job.
That's where we spin off from. That's where we spin off from the educational thing into this sexism thing that girls have to do this and boys have to do this egalitarian thing that they've seen in the Icelandic countries that doesn't work. You can say, I want them to be, they're 50% engineers and 50% nurses and 50%. It doesn't work. People do what they want to do, what they're called to. Men are more drawn towards space and structure and things, and women are more drawn towards social events, social whatever. But people, that's why there are more women in teaching and more women in nursing and more women in social skills, like social work.
Yep. Nurturers.
But to get back to the educational thing, I just don't think everybody needs to go to college. Now, where do we stop? I mean, how do you put the brakes on this?
I don't know if it's about putting the brakes on that as much as it's an awareness and a conversation. I've shared this with both of my older children, not my youngest right now, but she's heard the same thing. And that is, I don't care what you do. Just do something you enjoy. You need to have the ability to make a living, do something you love. And it's really interesting and I've shared this with you before too, and that is the idea that when individuals come out of high school, that they're downloaded with all this information of like what they're going to do with the rest of their life at 18. And that's ridiculous because that does not happen unless it's been.
It doesn't happen in college either.
Right. No, it doesn't. And well, do we want to talk about how many people that have college degrees that don't use them?
Absolutely.
I mean,
It's huge.
It's massive.
It's huge.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And
I think I've stated this before you. I think it was almost 7 out of 10 for people who came out of chiropractic colleges, and I don't remember the year, that they're not practicing. 70% of the people who graduated, they're not in the field that they just spent $100,000 in.
I know, right? That's insanity. So, but I want to go back to something that you shared when people kind of went around the room to say like, what made you decide to become a chiropractor? And you said, well, my dad was one, not you, that a peer would say that. It was
my grandpa was a chiropractor.
Right. So finding self-passion in something you're doing. I've told my oldest son this, that my journey has always continued to be evolving. When I first went in, I have like 12 hours of credits because I told you I went in. Everyone's like, well, you have to go to school and you have to do something. And I'm like, okay, so I'll go to school and do something.
Yeah.
I'll be an educator. Funny enough, we're talking about education.
Yeah.
And I got in and I did an intro to teaching course and I had to do some observation in a classroom. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
This is not my forte. So I was like, I immediately was like, after having that class, what it taught me, thankfully, that I didn't get too far down the line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not for me.
Hey, my doctorate degree allows me to do substitute teaching and teaching. It doesn't, that's a certificate that's kind of carte blanche to do wherever you go. Well, I went back to Manitou, where I graduated high school, and I did substitute teaching. So I like the little guys. I think the little guys are the ones that are most impressionable, and there's still a chance to save them. But man, the high schoolers were just monsters. Yeah. You had no legacy there. You had no clout. They don't care who you are. They don't. And you're a substitute teacher, you're at the bottom of the barrel. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how I got to where I found my way was jobs. I was in the middle of finishing up the semester because I was already doing what I was in the courses of. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And it was kind of like, well, what are you going to do? And then it's like, well, what are you going to do? You got to do something. And this was before my mother passed away. And I remember telling her, I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. She's like, well, don't be a teacher. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, well, you have all the time to figure it out. And I ended up going to work as an administrative assistant at a social service agency.
Yeah.
And my brain exploded. It was like, this is my jam. These are my people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then I did that. I changed over to psychology and went into people's homes and worked in the juvenile field for a variety of different, so when I'm saying all this to share that the evolving of myself and my education, if I just went with the feedback of what I was supposed to do, I may have gotten an education that I would have never wanted to use, been stuck in. And what was great is once I completed my undergrad, I had that under me. So then I could go right into grad school, right? And then continue to move forward. That's a benefit. A lot of people get out of school, they start getting into the degrees, and sometimes they have degrees that are and I don't mean are very, I don't want to call them useless because that's not very kind, but they're not very well known. Or what is I'm trying to think of some of the degrees.
Gender studies.
Oh yeah. Well, you mean general studies?
Gender?
Yeah,
there's actual gender studies.
I thought there was general studies.
Well,
there's both.
There is.
There's both. But
you're not wrong.
But it's kind of hard to market that education to some avenues, right? And so I know several people that I know that work at great jobs. They're 9-to-5 jobs, not anything to do with their education.
Absolutely.
But
you know how many females I can't tell you how many females I know of college years that wanted to be marine biologists. I want to be a marine biologist.
In Kansas?
This role, yeah. So when you get out and you have this degree in marine biology, what are you going to do? Oh, I manage a sandwich shop over here. Okay.
Great.
But my point, okay, here's the thing though. So education in itself, I have a lot of education. In the education, it's never been a waste to me. But what I want people to understand about, especially higher education, you should learn along the way how to learn. So after I had a couple of bachelor's degrees and I was going to go on and finish my doctorate degree, which I did.
Pants.
I looked into getting a master's degree, and I started looking at the coursework, and the coursework's idiotic. It was, at some point you should be able to go, look, haven't you learned how to learn yet? Pick up your phone. I can ask this thing anything. Haven't you learned how to learn? The sad fact is people don't know how to use they don't even know what a Dewey Decimal System is.
I was going to say.
But that was my time.
My time. Once you just pipe down, I could go into a library and get a library book.
Well, okay. So, good for you. Anyway, people have no idea what it's like to do real research. Go in and look for real things and try to find real articles. And that takes time. Well, now that stuff's at your fingertips. And
get the thingy that did the thingy.
And you can do the thing. You have search engines. Hey, find me all the paperwork. And now we have AI.
I was going to say AI is a whole other.
Which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's going to be another upcoming episode, which is its own monster by itself.
But the point I wanted to make is that at no point in my life was education a waste.
So absolutely not.
Do I use all of this stuff? No, but it is enlightening, and that stuff will stay with you if you continue to exercise those memories and learn how to learn and learn how to foster and pull from those things you drew from. But I would, there are people. I didn't even start med school till I was 33. That's my point with anyone is I don't care how old you are. I graduated with a woman who was 70.
That's amazing.
She was 70 when good for her. And
there's a lot of times where I've talked to people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. I haven't figured out what I do when I grow up. Yeah, when I grow up. Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, my point, the message I give my sons, and this is surrounded by the education that they have, is you want to be an astronaut? Good. You want to be a surgeon? Good. You want to be a famous painter? Great. Do all of those things. Be a famous artistic surgeon astronaut. I don't care. Who's gonna care? It's just another talent that you carried on, and you can learn how to do that, or you can do it on your own. It doesn't really matter.
Well, and I think that one of the things that I appreciate everything you're saying there, but there is a substantial concern of the racket around the financial cost of this education.
Oh, yeah.
It is a racket.
Yeah, it is.
And it's ridiculous,
it is.
Really. And so that really impairs people to further their education.
It is.
Because of that.
Yeah.
So on both sides of saying you don't have to go and do this, we should also have the ability to have individuals go and learn.
Yeah. Here's an example. My son has gone all the way through and will now be entering into his master's program, and he only racked up $3,000.
That's amazing.
How? He worked before.
Mm-hmm.
He paid for everything in cash. He worked during, and he made good money following the skills he had learned before. He carried that over, and he did that part-time.
Which, is it okay to say that your son is an educator?
Yeah, he became an educator.
That's
phenomenal. He's now actually an educator.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that he portrays these stories back to me about, man, this is hard. Yeah. And what's so hard about it, son? I won't say.
Okay.
I'll just say, these kids are really, really, really unskilled.
Yeah, sure.
They have been pushed through this thing.
The system.
They have been squeezed out of this thing, and they're now paying to be in this education, and they are not ready. They can't do it. And my son has taken it upon himself to tell. And my son, Maxwell, will tell you he's very proud about the fact that he has the opportunity to perhaps affect these young people and change their lives.
Good for him.
Make
Absolutely.
That turn. Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real educator.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it.
You should be.
And for the one thing I think is most notable about my son Maxwell is that before he even graduated his bachelor's, in a part-time job, he made $97,000 a year, busting his ass, working in a tire shop.
I wonder where he got that work ethic from.
But the whole point is, now he's making the pay of a teacher. And he feels it. Believe me, he feels it. It's about a third, right?
Yeah. But I love to, when I hear that you talk about his driven component of the compassion that is within his character, of saying, so the amount may be low, but the impact is very high.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we need.
That's what we should all be striving for.
Yeah.
We went back to, we mentioned once before that college doesn't prepare you for the real world.
Oh, no.
When you were in school, you're going to go out there and you're going to be great this and great that. But you know what? And they push you out that door. Anybody tell you how to lease a space? Anybody tell you how to negotiate a contract for a lease? Anybody tell you this is how I put an advertising campaign together? This is how
to do a podcast?
No one. You got to do, this all comes out of our pockets, right?
Right.
Yeah, this is hard.
It's very hard. Very hard.
I remember when I was in chiropractic college, towards the end of my clinicals, I would listen to these doctors come in and they would just rave about seeing 500 patients a day. Do the math. It's impossible. There's no way you're giving anybody good care in seconds, because that's all you have to spend on somebody's seconds. That's travesty. But you know what? Nobody prepares you for, this is how you locate us. This is how you locate a good place to practice.
Right.
This is how you research, what kind of disposable incomes you're living in. This is how you research, how you're going to set your fees or structure your fees. This is how you set up nobody teaches you that. Mm-hmm. You got to go and do it.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, just copy what another guy does, or solicit the help of a professional who will come in and go, well, I've set up lots of things and I'll show you how to do this one. Okay, great. But you pay for that.
Right.
And it ain't yours. The idea ain't yours. You're learning how to do it by somebody else's thing. It should be as organic as you know how to do this already. Mm-hmm. And I had already owned businesses, so I already knew the gist of all that stuff. So, but back to education is that education doesn't have to happen in a classroom. It happens all around us.
I was going to say, it should happen every single day.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the poor side of education is, and this is what you receive from the social media aspects of belief systems. And there is this idea that when I see an action and a behavior, especially in adolescence, oh, well, this seems acceptable here. This seems like this is okay. So I'm going to try that, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to act this way, or I'm going to be responsive.
Yeah.
Now, again, I've had that very same thing in my own home with my youngest, where she has come home with some
excuse me,
unique behaviors. And I'm like, hey, what is going on, sis?
Yeah.
Like,
where'd you get that?
Yeah. And then there's a little bit of an attitude, and I'm like, oh, no. See, I do not have it.
Yeah.
And once I reacclimate her to her environment and help her understand you are home and whatever you learned was not acceptable.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a disconnect there, because of course there's, the initial defiance and hurt feelings. And then I'm like, let's have a conversation about this. Like, what? Like, what? Does that feel good to act that way? And she's like, well, no, but I saw so-and-so do this. And I'm like, yeah, but they may do that. You don't.
Yeah.
But again, I'm obvious occupational hazard as a therapist, but interactive parent. When I see something, I say something to my kids. I have lots of great conversations with them and I hear them out. I think that's important.
Yeah.
But I also give them structured feedback that may not feel so warm and fuzzy. I think that's missing too.
Yeah.
Because when they go to an environment, some of the kids that are going into the schools, and, there is, I'm thinking, we had 9 or 10 different teachers at one time for one of my, I think his senior year for my son or something like that. And just imagine, that any adolescent brain, and it's maturing, but it's still an adolescent brain, having to deal with 9 different personalities, different teaching styles, different ways of communication. So it's hard to have that. It's really great because in this one class, he's really cool, but this class, he's kind of a turd.
Yeah.
Well, that's life, right? Well, at the same time, I also, on the other side, to be fair, on the other side of the coin, when you have now 25, 30 students in your class and you have all these different personalities, I don't even know how you would even attempt to manage that. That is just beyond me. But my point in all
that's the call for discipline, right?
You literally took over that.
How can a teacher possibly do that if the children aren't disciplined? That they don't have it at home, they won't have it here. And if the parents allow it, it's carried over in the school. Now it's even free reign because they're not around. I can do what I want. It's sad.
It's pretty tough.
It's
a pretty tough situation. So I know we've kind of rambled on here.
We have, but
what's the point of this discussion? What have we learned here?
Well, what I hope people understand is when we talk about education, everybody has has their own take in education. I know brilliant people who didn't graduate school. I know brilliant people who went on to do brilliant things, and they bailed out of school in the 7th grade, right? But they had something to fall back on. Now we have these people who are attaining letter degrees. They actually have the pretty plaques with the degrees, and they couldn't find their butt with both hands. And that's a tough thing to know, that we've done them this disservice, that they've been told they have to go to college, they have to do this, and they really have never been able to even foster the idea of what they're really good at.
Right.
Nobody's even asked them what they're, and with the advent of video games, pornography, all of these things that pollute our, what we call free time. Well, that used to be taken up with work and earning money. Well, now they don't work or earn money. And these are the kids, there used to be a term called boomerangs, where your grown children go and try life, don't do so well, and then they're back in your basement in their mid-30s, early 40s, and then they find their way and they move back out. That's a boomerang. Now we have people with total failure to launch. They never leave the basement.
Correct.
They went to school from the basement, they return to the basement, and they'll live in the basement forever if you let them. That's tragic.
No, it is tragic.
It's tragic. So
what do you do about it?
Well, get involved, right? For the little people, you need to get involved with your school board. You have to find out what they do and what their policies are. The tragic part is that you need to have a mother and a father. You got to have a father right here. You got to have somebody out there to balance out the social aspects that need to be part of society, that toughness to survive. And then, sorry.
I am so sorry.
Sorry.
But you're doing great, by the way.
I know, but from the male's point of view, there's just a difference.
Yeah.
And there's a discipline that can come about when young people get to mirror what males, full-grown adults do. It's missed.
Yeah. And well, there is, not to venture down to another, spiral off track, but when you talk about that, I think of when I see, you don't have to, the roles of what used to be identifying a boy's role and a girl's role. Like, well, but you don't have to do those roles. You can do whatever, which is true. We don't have to be strong and lift this up and take care of this and do this because you're loved either way. Well, that's true. But there is a self-identity, a self-worth piece to understanding I'm building a character here, a positive.
I smell a Jordan Peterson thing coming on here.
Well, I love Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, as do I.
But it's, oh no, you can, again, back to saying, oh, well, I don't want you to feel like you have to be anything.
Yeah.
But we literally have to educate our children on what is positive characteristics and behaviors and values and morals and belief systems. I mean, all these things. When it's like, well, we'll just let them believe whatever. A child literally doesn't know. You want them to believe whatever. They're going to believe whatever they see on social media, whatever they hear from their friend down the street, or, the person at Quick Trip that they overheard saying something. I mean, they literally aren't. They are complete sponges. It's what they are. And you're just like, well, it's whatever you think it is. It's like, no, it's not whatever you think it is.
Well, now you're getting into what truth, right? What my truth, their truth, some truth.
It's most like when it's something. When I say no, it's not that. I'm saying something like when I was looking at a picture of something, I'm like, well, that is clearly a panda bear, and my daughter was being goofy, and she's like, no, that is a brown bear. And I'm like, no, that is clearly a panda bear. And so then I was like specifically identifying what, but it's silly stuff like that, but it's actually not silly because in the big grand scheme of things, it's actually gotten way out of control.
Yeah.
But again, I don't want to venture off to that. That will be another time.
Well, I thought you were going to go down the route of the, somebody is struggling and they're down in the dumps, and then here comes an adult, the parent maybe, and they put their arm around her. That's okay, honey. People will love you the way you are. Mm-hmm. That's a bad message, right? It's okay to tell people,
do you love you the way you are?
That's the question you need to ask. If you're so unhappy, why are you so unhappy? That's the question to ask. And if you don't like who you are, change it. Mm-hmm. Now, that's gotten twisted. That's gotten really twisted. Okay, I will change it. Well, you can't go jumping out of one body into the next. Mm-hmm. Take what you have, do the best you can. But nobody's putting constraints on you what you want to do in your career. Nobody. You can do anything you want to do, but it takes hard work, and so nobody's going to give it to you. Nobody falls to the top of the narrow.
Oh, and there you go with that whole hard work.
I know.
How dare you?
Stupid hard work.
Can't believe you. You're going to work at it. Nothing comes easy. Are you saying that I'm going to have to suffer?
You're going to have to suffer. Everybody, life is suffering, right? The Buddhist.
It is so. Okay, I don't want to get on
it's based on
because I'm trying to come to a close.
Well,
but I could go on and on.
But the takeaway I want people to do is you can get involved with your local, state and federal educational practices, their policies. Find out what's going on. Attend meetings. Go to your city councils. See what's going on. Find out what's going on in your educational society and or systems, and be a part of it. Have a voice. Make sure you voice it too. At the very least, if enough people will voice this thing, remember that your school boards are run by the public. The school board is an elected service provided by the public. Or
people are going to like hearing this.
They do not work for the school.
Right.
They work for us. Mm-hmm. You go to the school board and if there's enough people, you'll direct them. You'll go to the president and you'll go, we are directing you to this. Mm-hmm. And you're laying that on the president's head. That's not a suggestion. We're telling you. Mm-hmm. We have this many signatures. You do this. That's laid squarely. Now, if a decision is made off of that thing, that president needs to be gone. Mm. Your public runs your school boards. That's where I'm going to get off my soapbox.
All righty. You may step down for a
Thank you very much. You guys take care of yourselves.
That's right.
Take care of the ones that look after you, too. I mean,
absolutely. I think we do, we talk about this rigid exterior that we have to have, and structure and discipline. And we do need to have those things.
Yeah.
But within all of that, the compassionate understanding of self. And I will kind of segue into my closing point would be, if you don't like where you're at or what you hear or something, you have all the opportunity in the world to do something about it. It will not be easy.
That's right.
It will probably be pretty painful, but I think it would probably be pretty worth it.
But did you die?
Did you die?
No. Everybody struggles, but you know what? Find something and realistically go for it, and you'll make it. It happens in everything. Education's no different.
You don't find something in one way, find it in another.
Look, I never thought I'd be a doctor. My friends thought I'd be a doctor. I never knew it. Well, why would I think I'd be a doctor?
It's funny when you say that because I had no idea. Oh, well, that's not true. When I was like 6, I thought I was going to be a nurse. And then I saw blood and I was like, absolutely not. Yeah.
Isn't that red stuff supposed to be inside?
Yeah. There's
something the matter with you.
It was not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, thank you. And I'm not a fan of needles. Not at all.
Two things that you're going to deal with. Yeah. Sorry.
It's fine. I've dealt with them several times in my life. I just don't have to deal with them professionally.
Now that you're a mom. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. That's very true.
Well, thanks, Liz. Good conversation.
Well, please go to our website. And
absolutely.
Feedback is always something that we enjoy.
Like, comment, definitely comment, share. Mm-hmm. Look for our discussions that come up on our mind melt forums. Yeah.
Can join us there because this is probably a discussion we will have there at some point.
Yeah, and no question.
Yeah.
This is an ongoing thing. And what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to turn this thing around. It's bad.
So many things need to be turned around.
Yeah.
Well, thank you if you did listen in or view us, whichever.
We
appreciate it.
I always say you guys take care of yourselves. Right?
And be kind to yourself.
Thanks, Liz.